What if the very things that made Jesus a great leader would get him fired in youth ministry today? Today, we're going to get a little uncomfortable talking about the gap between being Christ-like and church expectations today. So stay tuned. Like, he had 120 kids the other night, and now he has 12. Like, what happened? Like, what's going on?
The Lord is not blessing his ministry. Would you fire Jesus?
That's what I was really
like, if you were a youth leader and as a volunteer, like, he sometimes wouldn't show up to things because he was out praying.
And then the kid makes it very clear, like, they don't really desire spiritual things. And we pull back. And I find what happens is the parents are kind of like, they kind of see you as what was maybe keeping their kid from going over the edge. And they
do for a few what you wish you could do for many. And I think that was Jesus' model as well. And
because you'd be like, man, that dude, like, you know,
he only has 12 students in his ministry.
I can imagine a church elder saying, quote, he spends way too much time praying on the church's dime. Let him pray on his own time.
I do think some churches, like, there's a don't question the pastor type thing. Like, and I think that's wrong. I think Jesus would question, like, a lot of things. Even his own disciples, there were several times where they're like, you're like, this is not a good church growth model. It's like, you're telling.
Now, in today's episode, we're going to be working through a blog post. It's actually based on a book from our buddy Greg Stier, Why Jesus Would Get Fired. And it walks through a fictional elder meeting with a newly hired youth pastor, J.C. Davidson, son of David, and some uncomfortable conversations that really reveal kind of where we're coming from, or maybe the current church culture or expectations, and why Jesus really is, even today, a radical who just flipped everything on its head. And so hopefully this is a little uncomfortable for all of us, but also maybe encouraging as well for us to kind of do that. But before we dive in, we have an initiative going on right now, the 10K in May. This podcast is going out on May 6th, so we're still early in May. And
we still have some kits to send out to
you. We do.
If you haven't signed up yet, we can get them to you so you can still participate this month.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you can go ahead, follow the link in the description and sign up, and those kits will go directly to your church's front door. But maybe you're listening to this and you've already taken the challenge as well. I know we have 26 youth ministries participating in this nationwide, which is really, really cool to see. All different
16 different states, I think.
Yeah, all different sizes, all different backgrounds. And so, Keith, you and I have done this in our own youth ministry. And so maybe somebody's listening to this and they've implemented 10K in May. What are some encouragement that you've seen? Maybe some ways it's changed your youth ministry. Maybe even like a quick win you could give them. What do you have for this listening?
Well, one, like, I wanted to, not just ask my students to do this, if I wasn't going to do it myself. So I wanted to kind of challenge me, like 10 gospel conversations. That's pretty like a good rhythm for me, like, already. So I was like, okay, I want to really, kind of up the ante, and we've known Greg Gibson,
Dave
Gibson, goodness,
my hero.
And he, like, really convicted us when we saw him speak, where he's like, I've been sharing the gospel every day for a long time, and right now it's been like over 800 days in a row or something like that.
He said, I pray every day, may the Lord ever take me home before I ever disgrace his name. And I was just like, I want to be Dave Gibson.
Yeah, he's a great guy. Yeah, and so I just told my students, I was like, listen, it's going to be challenging. I'm going to have to be intentional about this, and, like, I don't even know how I'm going to do this, but I want to commit to one a day every day in the month of May. And so I've been doing it as we were recording this. It's May 5th, and I haven't had one today yet. It's in the morning, but.
So if any of you youth leaders,
so far,
need the gospel presented to you,
send them into my inbox, and I'll start sharing the gospel with them. But with that though too, it's just been cool to see in my own life. Like, I've just been praying for opportunities, and then the Lord's been faithful to provide different opportunities. And I've felt a little bit more forced, like, where I was like trying to get things started, and it was just like falling flat. And Saturday was one of those days where I helped coach my son's baseball team, and so I was trying to talk with people at baseball, and, like, nothing was happening. And I was like, okay, well, I know we got to go get some supplies at Costco. So I was like, it's gonna be a madhouse. There's gonna be so many people. I was like, I'll try to talk with the sample ladies or something like that, and nothing. Like, I kept getting interrupted, and, like, it was just So then I was able to actually have a conversation with a mechanic that I was picking my car up from, and we talked for a long time and stuff. So the Lord is faithful to provide, those opportunities if you're willing. One of the cool things, there's another one of my leaders who's an adult who's who's trying to do the 1-a-day challenge as well. And I asked him on Sunday, I was like, how's it going? And he's like, it's been really challenging. And he's like, I was almost going to bed, and I was like, I didn't have a gospel conversation today. So he's like, I need to get some stuff from CVS anyway. So he goes out to CVS, and he's like trying to like find people to share the gospel with. And he was there for like an hour walking around, and it was so suspicious that like an employee came up to him and was like, are you stealing something? Like he didn't know like what he was going. He's like, can I help you find something? And so he just kind of seemed suspicious because he was like trying to find someone. And so he ended up sharing with the employee, but that didn't really go that far. But anyways, just the commitment level of just committing to something and then trying to see it played out. But it's been encouraging. And then we've had stories from our students. You had one.
Yeah.
What was it? Was it Red Robin?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had one of our students. It's been cool to see how creative kids have gotten. So the idea of 10K in May, for those of you who maybe haven't signed up yet, is that we're working together, all the youth groups together, to have 10,000 gospel conversations in the month of May, and that means 1,000 students committing to that challenge, each having 10. Mm-hmm. And when they have a gospel conversation, they give that bead back to you, and that's how we keep track of them. But I'm
wearing my bracelet, even though I've got 6 left of the 10, but I'll have to replenish after.
This is bracelet 2 for me.
Yeah.
So, but we had one girl, she's Christian private school, so she doesn't have as many opportunities as maybe some others. And they went out to eat at Red Robin, and at the end it gives you a survey. And so she put like, thank you so much for the great service. And then she put the gospel in. But what was funny is she didn't have enough room. She ran out of characters. So she deleted thanks for your great service and just put the gospel in life in 6 words and submitted
Hopefully
that.
She gave a big tip too.
Yeah. And then we had another kid he's kind of a quieter kid. And he came up and he handed me all 10 beads, and he was like, here you go. And I was like, dude, we're 4 days in. And he was like, yeah, he's like, I just, I shared with everybody I knew. And he was like, I don't know how I'm going to have any more though. Cause like, I'd really have to go out of my comfort zone. And I was like, well, let's do it. But if you're looking for a quick win too, so Dare to Share has a video on their YouTube. It's also in the Life in 6 Words app, but it's on YouTube. It's called Who Am I? So if you go to Dare to Share's YouTube channel, find that. It is an animated depiction that walks through the gospel super clearly, so well done. And so we just put a QR code up on the screen last night and said, hey, scan it. Send it to as many friends as you want. And our kids are always willing to do that. So we had kids who came, made their bracelet that night, and then at the end of the night, were giving me 10 beads back because they shared it with 10 friends. And it clearly walks through the gospel, but again, in an animated way. So check that out and maybe challenge your students with that too. So excited to hear. If you have any cool stories, please share them with us. We would love to hear them. That'll be an encouragement, not only to us, not only just to Keith, but also to Keith's wife and mom and 4 boys who helped him pack all of those.
My grandmother
those
were
kids.
packing the kids. Yeah, I mean,
so they would love to hear that too, as well.
It was a family affair to get all those packed up. Bracelets.
They know their labor is not in vain. But today, we're talking about why Jesus would get fired in youth ministry, and that you might kind of be like, oh, okay, well, what are you talking about here, guys?
I want, before we go over these different aspects, I almost want like people to decide in their mind, or maybe like leave a comment saying like, would he be fired at your church? Like realistically, I think a lot of people just automatically just say, oh no, of course not.
Yeah.
But when you see some of these, you're like, oh man,
especially number 4.
Yeah,
number
4 was like a big one for us, where it was like, oh yeah, that would be a red. I mean, not a red flag, but like a thing that people would complain about.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I don't. Let's preface by this. I don't think Jesus would get into youth ministry looking at how he could get the least amount of complaints or not cause problems. Like that's one thing.
I think even his own disciples, there were several times where they're like, you're like, this is not a good church growth model. It's like you're telling people that
Jesus, we had hundreds.
Eat your flesh and drink your blood.
Well,
this is awkward.
We had hundreds, and you said whoever wants to follow me must take up his, deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. And like everybody left, and then you could imagine like the pastor being like, "Why'd you say that? Like we had so many kids,
we had so many."
So, but without further ado, let's not speak for it. Let's dive into the 4 reasons Jesus might get fired at your church today. And as Keith said, think through. If you were to replace you with Jesus, would Jesus get fired? Would he last? And number 1 is that Jesus would get fired for spending too much time praying. And so in Luke 5:16, it says, but Jesus often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. Greg writes, Jesus often couldn't be found because he was off somewhere praying. Many times he would intercede for hours on behalf of his disciples and the people he was seeking to reach. He would wrestle in prayer to discern direction from the Father. Sometimes the disciples were frustrated because they couldn't find Jesus, perhaps thinking he was missing potential ministry opportunities. And Greg writes this: I can imagine a church elder saying, quote, he spends way too much time praying on the church's dime. Let him pray on his own time. So,
okay, I just want to say here, I don't think a lot of youth leaders, I don't think people are complaining about this for youth leaders, but like, yeah, this would be a thing. Yeah.
In a way that you're saying.
I feel convicted in my own life. I'm like,
yes.
I feel like I never spend enough time praying.
Yes. Yeah.
And yeah, we would say Jesus maybe spent too much time praying. Like,
yeah.
where he might be criticized, where it's like, where is he? Like,
yeah.
what is, like, we got to do stuff. Like, what, it's like, he's off praying. Oh, come on. And again. Like,
yeah.
But yeah, he knew he needed to be about his Father's will.
Well, and that idea too of, I can't get past that quote. He spends way too much time praying on the church's dime. It's like, that's where I think.
What are we paying him to do?
Correct. Yeah. I think the world has kind of crept in where it's like there is, and everybody wants to bring kind of their experience into the kingdom. And that's the reality of the gospel, is it's unlike anything else. So for instance, at my workplace, this is how we do things. Like, well, not in God's kingdom, it's different. Hey, well, when I was, insert here, well, that's not how we do things in God's kingdom. Now, all truth points back to Jesus, so there's certainly some lessons that are valuable to bring. But at the end of the day, it's like the kingdom works differently. And so, I think oftentimes we're paid as like doers. And, it's like, I pay you to get the ministry done. But that's why we have to understand that Ephesians 4:12, it's like our job is actually to equip the saints for the work of the ministry. And one of the best ways to do that is to pray for them. And so we challenge you, are you praying for your students? Are you praying for their families? We in the cohort that we're running right now, we've talked to a couple youth pastors, and one of the biggest comments we've gotten is like, when those kids roll into youth group and I know that I've already prayed for them that week, it changes how I see them and how much I care for them. And so, I would reflect on that. It's like, if Jesus were hired as your associate youth pastor, would he be like, so when do you pray? And you'd be like, well, no, Jesus, like we have Wednesday night programming and we have Sunday night programming, and I need to get the camp registration out and I need to do all this. And Jesus might just be like, all right, well, I'm going to go pray. And,
Yep. Well, number 2 is bringing in the wrong element.
Yeah.
And Jesus was called oftentimes a friend of tax collectors and sinners, Matthew 11:19. So could you imagine how many bad kids bring to youth group? So like thugs, alcoholics, prostitutes, Jesus would reach out to and bring into the church. Yeah, that would definitely be an interesting.
All right. How uncomfortable do we want to get here, Keith?
I mean, I'm willing to get uncomfortable.
Okay.
What do you mean?
Well, so who do you think would really have the problem with this? Like, who do you think would really be the loudest complainers if that was the crowd that started coming to youth ministry?
I mean, a lot of like Christians. Yeah. I mean, other Christians.
Yeah. I think a lot.
I would say so. Like, we've had this happen in different seasons. So right now, I feel like a lot of our students that are attending our youth ministry are fairly churched.
Yeah.
And so there's not. I mean, but there's been times where there's been a lot more like unchurched kids that just didn't know, like, what, like how to act at church or whatever. And like how to, not that you have to change your behavior, but it's like, but sometimes even I understand this, from a parent perspective, and not saying that this is correct or right.
That's where I was going with this.
But the parents would complain about the influence of their child being affected by, somebody that's not. And so there has been times where I was leading youth ministry in South Carolina, excuse me, where there was some people that had come to Christ that were like very rough around edges, like, and they just didn't know yet. Like, it wasn't like, we weren't expecting them to change overnight, but I did get some complaints from parents of other Christian students that were like, hey, if that kid's here, like my kid can't be. And, and so I would just say, that might be what Jesus would shake up a little bit. It's like, he'd invite people that, were smoking as they walked in, or like, that are trying to deal drugs and stuff. I don't know. I mean, we've had to, so I don't know. I always wonder that too, is like, because we've had to ask students not to come back based on the danger that they presented. So you also see though that Jesus was protective of his flock.
Yes.
There's a lot of shepherd imagery that he uses. Yeah. And so I wouldn't say like just open up the doors and just invite like people in that are going to be dangerous to everybody. It's like there is a protection that you should have in place for your flock. Like you want to guard them from wolves, and that's not bad. And Jesus I'd say would echo that. However, like he did minister to a lot of people that were rejected in society. Yeah. So
that's what I wanted to get at, is I think a lot of times it's our church kids' parents who are saying like, hey, like this isn't, my kid is being exposed to things that I don't want them exposed to. And it's like, look, like our goal is not to our goal is not to bring the world into youth group, but the reality is that our kids are in the world. And so when we bring a worldly kid in, like, that's what they're bringing in. And yeah, we've had difficult conversations I've had kids come to me and be like, hey, there's kids who are like at school, like, that's a bad kid. And I'm like, well, I'm really glad they're here. And they're like, what? Like, I don't think you understood what I said. And I'm like, no. Like, I'm really glad they're here. Now, let's see how it goes. And there might be a possibility. But I maybe want to encourage, because we've had parents pull their kids out of our youth ministry before because they're like, I don't know, like, it's a little uneasy. And I've had to reflect, and I want to make sure it's not like a prideful thing for us to just be like, oh, well, forget it. But at the end of the day, I keep feeling convicted. It's like, no, if we don't reach them, who's going to reach them? Yep. But when they're here, at youth ministry programs and things like that, it's like, hey, here are the standards and expectations, and we're not gonna change these. But yeah, this
third one would maybe rustle some feathers.
Why don't you take the third one? Because I really want to take the fourth one.
Confronting the pastor about his sermon. So, I mean, I'm fortunate. Like, I really do feel like, I've started a church, like, we're known for preaching the word. And, like, and so, like, it's not like I'm like, oh man, I need to confront anybody. Yeah. Like, but I do think that some churches, like, there's a don't question the pastor type thing. Like, and I think that's wrong. I think Jesus would question, like, a lot of things. So yeah, but Matthew 23:3-4, it says, so you must be careful to do everything they tell you, but do not do what they do, for they do not practice what they preach. They tie up heavy, cumbersome loads, put them on the other people's shoulders, but they themselves are not willing to lift a finger to move them. So I'm wondering, and Greg said in the book, can you imagine what Jesus would say to the typical, quote, turn or burn pastor who made getting saved more about commitment, surrender, and service rather than simple faith in Christ's death and resurrection? So I think he was more on the lines of, like, people that wouldn't really preach grace. Yeah, that he would confront them on that, and Jesus would directly confront those who dared to insult his gospel of grace.
Yeah. I mean,
imagine. I don't know if it'd be like preference. It wouldn't be like your delivery was off, or it's like, I think it's more just like,
being honest and transparent too with hey, if we're talking about something, don't be a hypocrite. And the way it's so simple. It's like, the way to not be a hypocrite is say, I struggle with this. So like, I'm going to share with you what God's word says, but I've really wrestled with this, this week. But I mean, we've all had that feeling of like somebody coming up to us after a sermon, and you're just kind of like, okay, what are they going to say? Yep. And when they start off with like a question, I found I got like, you get super defensive because you're like, I prepared this, like I worked through this, like, and you just came here. Like, we went in, I forget exactly what I was preaching on, but it was Sunday morning main service. And I assumed that there's two Marthas in Scripture, and I assumed that they were the same. Mary. I assumed another Mary was Mary Magdalene. And a lady came up to me, she's like, are you sure like that's the same? Because I don't know if that's the same. And she was doing it honestly. And I was like, yeah, no, it's the same. And then I was like, wait, why am I getting so defensive? Like, this isn't even a big deal. And so I ended up like doing some more research, and I texted her later, and I was like, hey, actually, like, I really appreciate you texted me that. And I did some research, and we're not sure, like, so thank you for saying that. But I was like, why did I get so defensive? Like, it didn't even matter.
Someone question you. Yeah. Personal attack.
So if somebody came up to me every week, I'd be like, they just need to leave.
Well, this might be a good question to ask. And I was thinking about this for my own, like, if Jesus were to criticize your preaching, what would he criticize you on? And, like, is it too service level? Is it like, is your prep time, like, would you not really give it adequate time? Like, are you just serving it up, but you're not applying it yourself? There's so many dynamics to this that I'm like, oh man, like, if Jesus was, he is listening to me.
He is.
But if he was to criticize me on one aspect of it, what would it be?
On the fly, what would it be?
I feel like in this season of life, I feel like I never, there's always that balance. Like, you can always spend more time, but then like there's that like point of no return, or like where it's like, or diminishing returns, where it's like, I could, if you spent 40 hours on one message, you could probably still spend more. But so I think prep time, I feel rushed sometimes through like I wish I could like, meditate on it a lot more and like soak it in, and then I'll, of course, like have more time to apply it before I would teach on it. Yeah. That'd probably be my criticism.
I would say either that for me, or recently I found I was putting more effort into my Sunday morning services than I was my youth ministry. And Part of it's different. Like it's a little bit more
What's
relaxed.
interesting is
And
both of us could come up with something right away.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm wondering what, for the listener, ask yourself the question. If Jesus were to criticize your messages, what would it be for?
Yeah. Hopefully it wouldn't be doctrine, but there'd be some times I know
Hopefully it
where
wouldn't
he'd
be
come
like
up to me and be like,
pure gospel.
that's not the interpretation of that passage. And I'd
Yeah.
be like, oh, okay.
Now this fourth one is what we both agreed was like, oh, this would
get fired. Playing favorites. So Mark 3:13-14 says, Jesus went up on a mountainside and called to him those he wanted, and they came to him. He appointed 12 that they might be with him and that he might send them out to preach. So if those are the ones he wanted, what does that make the rest, right? I mean,
well, and I want to be clear here because we're not, because favoritism in Scripture is also committed not to do so. It's not like he sinned.
There's no more Jew or Greek or male or female, slave nor free.
So with that, I would say the illusion of favorites.
Well, so let me read what Greg.
Maybe
Greg says Jesus would be accused of playing favorites. Although he would minister to everyone, he would vest his life in only a few. Then he would choose to quote, be with him and to be sent out from him and to share the gospel and make disciples who make disciples. I can hear the complaints now. Jesus doesn't invest his time equally among everyone. He delegates way too much time to his leaders. Jesus plays favorites and leaves good people out of his inner circle.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that's been a thing. Like, I can see how this might be an issue where it's like, you're not spending the same amount of time with my kid. Like I imagine like a parent or even like, like someone.
I don't have to imagine it. It's happened.
It's happened to you?
It's happened to us.
I'm trying to think. I don't think it's happened to me where it's like.
So actually what has happened to us a lot is when we do go the extra mile in a kid's life and then the kid makes it very clear like they don't really desire spiritual things and we pull back. And I find what happens is the parents are kind of like, they kind of see you as what was maybe keeping their kid from going over the edge, and they don't really see it accurately. For it's like, no, your kid made it very clear they don't desire spiritual things, so we're just kind of like, we have limited time, we have limited resources, but every parent, and not right or wrong, like they want what's best for their kid. They're not necessarily as concerned with the other parent's kid as yours. And so I think oftentimes what happens is when you invest extra and then you pull back because the student pulls back and makes it clear like, hey, this isn't really what I want. That's when I've had parents, criticize or get on. Or the other thing, and this really hasn't happened to us, but I think let's be honest, like if you're investing in other kids more than maybe say the pastor's kid or the elder's kid, like that I think would be a big thing that might be uncomfortable.
Well, and I think sometimes it's the opposite where, youth leaders, I think I can fall in this track too, where I'm like, I can't do
that for everybody.
I can't do that for everybody. So therefore I'm going to treat everybody equally as far as like time commitment or going the extra mile, whatever. And I had a mentor that was really good. He was just like, do, for a few what you wish you could do for many. And I think that was Jesus's model as well. And so, so with that, like, I think there's a balance there of, obviously prioritizing and investing in people that are high will, like they want to be invested in. And then, like we used to call those like low hanging fruit. Like they're the ones that it's like, it's easy to invest in them because they want to receive it. And then there's also the balance of Luke 15. It's like, go after the one. And so with that, but I think Jesus modeled, that he did invest strategically in a few and even beyond that 12 before he,
well, and
without compromising his ministry to the crowds as well. But
I would say too, Jesus knew that others would complain. Like imagine Jesus knew, or the Holy Spirit revealed to him, I'm sure, how the other 9 disciples were feeling about him spending a lot of time with, Peter, James, and John. So I would say, of course, Jesus didn't let the opinions of the disciples change what he saw was necessary and what the truth was. But I have to think that's something we struggle with, where I think that might be something where it's like, well, I don't want to upset this kid because I'm not there. Because here's the reality. Then you have to have difficult conversations. Like you have to have difficult conversations, say, okay, hey, can I explain to you if you really like, I would love to fully invest in you, but here's why I'm doing what I'm doing. And so if you want to commit to this, like, let's do this. Because Jesus offered it to everybody, but he kept calling those to more and more and more, and then those who followed all the way through. So, I think
that's an honest question. Would Jesus be fired at your church? And if so, what would you fire Jesus?
That's what I was really
like if you were a youth leader and as a volunteer, like he sometimes wouldn't show up to things because he was out praying.
Yeah.
I'd be like, dude, you gotta.
Well, here's even a better. Okay,
I'm thinking just realistically.
So here's even a better question for youth pastors and youth leaders, because of course you'd be like, no, I wouldn't fire Jesus. Like, I wouldn't do. If Jesus, based on these 4 points, if Jesus showed up to a local youth pastors networking gathering, what would you think of him when you left? Because you'd be like, man, that dude, like,
he only has 12 students in his ministry.
It's like he spends so much time
he's not
praying.
even trying to grow it.
Like if he would actually just do this, and this, like his ministry would grow. Like he had 120 kids the other night, and now he has 12. Like what happened? Like what's going on? And like,
Lord is not blessing his ministry.
We could run with this for a long time.
Oh my goodness, this is convicting.
But that's where I think maybe our we might be a little bit more honest if Jesus came out.
Yeah, if Jesus was a volunteer in your ministry and had these things, if he spent too much time praying instead of showing up to youth group, he brought like just homeless kids that are dealing drugs. To youth group sometimes. He constantly confronted you about your sermons. And he played favorites. Like he invested only a few kids, even though like there's like 12 high school guys, and he's like, I'm only spending time with 3.
Well, I think what all of this reveals is, are we in the ministry, are we willing to deal with problems? Because I think that's what all of this comes down to, is like Jesus brings with him problems because he says, not because of what he's doing, but he's like, hey, the world hated me, so they're going to hate you too. And I think that's really understanding, hey, the gospel is offensive. It does bring opposition. It does bring spiritual warfare. Like Satan's going to be fine if you're just rolling out the equipment and you're having a nice sermon every now and then. Like, so I think that's really the question here is, what's your tolerance for being willing to deal with spiritual opposition or problems or difficulties? Because it's like, this is the main thing, and we're not going to navigate off that. But when we, as the Bible says, when we work harder maybe to please man than God because we're trying to keep everybody happy, then I think we lose sight of what really matters.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
Well, let us know what you think in the comments. If you are still not signed up for the 10K in May challenge, you can go over to edgeclub.org/10K to sign up and receive your kits. We still have some left, but we do have limited amounts. So make sure you are signing up ASAP so we can get those to you before the end of the month. Additionally, we have our Youth Ministry Mastermind, so that link will be in the description as well. It's a resource community where we are constantly talking about how to live out this gospel advancing ministry through our values and strategies and tactics that we share on this podcast. But if you're not part of that, you're missing out as well. So go ahead and join that. It's completely free. Even the kits are free to ship to you. So just let us know how many you need. And we'll see you guys on the next podcast next time.